You guys hear about this? Genuine fall of the Republic stuff.
Mr. President, why did you fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics?
Because I think her numbers were wrong. Just like I thought her numbers were wrong before the election. Days before the election, she came out with these beautiful numbers for Kamala. I guess Biden / Kamala. And she came out with these beautiful numbers trying to get somebody else elected. Then right after the election, I think on the 15th, November 15th, she had an $800,000 or $900,000 massive reduction. Said she made a mistake. That woman's numbers are
on the monthly jobs report. Going forward, why should anyone trust the numbers?
Well, that's
and
the
if
big thing. You're right. No, you're right. Why should anybody trust numbers? You go back to...
I really like this one especially because he's so senile, he's so cooked, he doesn't understand what's being asked. So Trump has, I don't think the actual firings happened yet. I think he just said he's going to fire the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, who's a bureaucrat who, among other things, you uses a variety of methodologies to determine the health of the job market and how many jobs are gained or lost in a given quarter. Really important information for a bunch of different sectors of the economy, right? And it came out Q2, info just came out, and the Bureau of Labor Statistics has provided information and revised previous information. So last August, the Bureau of Labor Statistics said employers had added roughly 818,000 fewer jobs over a 12-month period than previously believed, part of a normal annual revision process and preliminary as well. But Trump claimed that this was made right after the election, even though the announcement was made 2.5 months before Election Day. So basically what Trump is arguing is that the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics has been fudging numbers to benefit Biden and Kamala Harris and lying to make Trump look worse. This is demonstrably not true, but he's essentially firing her and going to replace her with a toady who will only provide numbers that look good for the administration. It's a signaling that we can't trust the government anymore when they give us information on job gains or job losses. Yeah, it is 2 + 2 = 5 shit. But Trump, again, by virtue of being mentally feeble, he doesn't understand the reporter is asking, like, how can we trust these numbers in the future? Trump's like, oh, no, you're right. You can't trust any of those Biden, Kamala Harris numbers.
Jobs report.
A mistake. That woman's numbers are...
On the monthly jobs report. Going forward, why should anyone trust the numbers?
Well, that's
and
the
if
big thing. You're right. No, you're right. Why should anybody trust numbers? You go back to election day. Look what happened 2 or 3 days before with massive, wonderful job numbers, trying to get him elected or her elected, trying to get whoever the hell was running. Because you go back and they came out with numbers that were very favorable to Kamala, okay? To trying to get him elected, trying to get her elected. And then on the 15th of November or thereabouts, they had an 800,000 or 900,000 overstatement reduction right after the election. It didn't work because you know who won, John? I won.
But here's the thing. Your supporters have had issues with these numbers.
I've had issues with the numbers for a long time. But today's, we're doing so well. I believe the numbers were phony, just like they were before the election. And there were other times. So you know what I did? I fired her.
Right.
And you know what? I did the right thing.
If any government official...
What is that noise? It's a helicopter. Or a helicopter. Yeah, pretty bad. Do you think he understands how weak this makes him look? Everything he does makes him look weak. It doesn't really matter, right? It won't change things for his fan base. This is still really destructive, though. Like, again, fall of the Republic type shit. It is really, 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 really difficult to get these numbers. How many people, how many jobs have been gained or lost over a time? These numbers are subject to multiple revisions. It's very difficult. The methodology for determining how many jobs have been gained or lost is really variable. There's a lot of, like, data science that goes into it that is highly interpretive. It's not just a straightforward, like, press the button, you have the correct number. We don't always know the correct number. In fact, we never know the exact number. We're always estimating. So future estimates are probably always going to be weighted in favor of Trump, which is really, really, really destructive. Because again, if we have unreliable numbers on things like unemployment or job gains, that affects a bunch of like macroeconomic analyses, you know? There are many power players in the economy that kind of rely on this information and need it to be useful. They need it to be accurate. How can people make decisions off of the future health of the economy if we have no idea how many jobs are being created or not created? I don't get how that benefits billionaires. It doesn't. This only benefits Trump, or at least he thinks it only benefits Trump. This is, at the end of the day, and this is the problem you run into, right? Fascists are slaves to capital, but the social mechanisms that fascists use to gain and hold power do not always benefit capital. So there's a push and pull. I mean, you can take it as a dialectic, if you will, between the things fascists do that businessmen like and the thing fascists do that the fascist likes, but actually destabilize business. Of course, oftentimes the businessmen are themselves fascists, so they get really amped up for things that are bad for them. Think like Kevin O'Leary being a super wealthy businessman. You know, he relies on the overall health of the economy, but he's cheering on tariffs. It doesn't make sense for his bottom line. It doesn't benefit him economically, but he's also stupid and, you know, very subject to these social pressures. Liberalism is the best ideology for capitalism? Well, yeah, absolutely. Liberals are the most competent stewards of a capitalist economy and always have been. It's kind of baked into the system.
Going forward, is presenting data or information you don't like. Should they fear for their job?
I've always had a problem with these numbers. You know, I was thinking about it this morning. Before the numbers that came out, I said, who is the person that does these numbers? And then they gave me stats about before the election. I had a similar problem. I mean, she gave out numbers that were so good for the Democrats. It was like unbelievable. And then right after the election, she corrected those numbers with, I think, almost 900,000.
The correction happened 2.5 months before the election, which, if anything, probably hurt Kamala Harris's presidential bid. For that news to have come out that, oh, job gains were a lot lower than was previously expected.
Correction. I think nobody had ever seen anything like it. Well, today she did the same thing with the 253,000, whatever the number was. No, we need people that we can trust. I mean, your question is a very good one. We need people we can trust.
Very good. Here we got the rundown. Looks good. Martin Sino Pants, a funny motherfucker.
Earlier, I spoke with Kevin Hassett, the director of the National Economic Council. Please take a listen. Kevin Hassett joins me now from the White House. He is the director of the National Economic Council.
Please justify this for me. I would love to hear it. Justify this for me. If even the wealthy don't like this, won't they push on Trump to reconsider? No, because wealthy people aren't actually like that good at knowing their own interests. You have like two strata of wealthy business people, right? You have people who understand how the systems work and are very savvy and tend to operate as a kind of like a cohesive block of their own interest. So these are usually people who are hedge fund managers. These are people who play the long game on the stock market. These are people who run businesses of medium size. Oligarchs are psychopaths who will happily trade away all of the, an oligarch will try to make an extra dollar selling you the boards of the boat that you and I are both on, you know? They'll pry up the floorboards of the boat to sell them to you, essentially. They are consumed by ego, very susceptible to flattery, and will often do things or be convinced into doing things that don't actually benefit them or their business. Is there any precedent for this? Yes, basically all of capitalism. This happens literally all the time. You have this like threshold past which people stop being like sensible arbiters of the market and start being driven by the same power, lust, and greed that monarchs do, essentially. Right? Elon, for example, makes bad business decisions all the time. It just doesn't matter because we don't live in a meritocracy, not even close. We live in a system where the same way stormwater pools at the lowest point in a city, wealth pools in the points where it's been directed to pool. It doesn't really have anything to do with, you know, Elon being smart or a good businessman. Certainly, many of the people he hires are good businessmen. I imagine that his accountants are very talented people, but they're not the ones, you know, who are set to be a trillionaire by 2030.
So, Kevin, it's good to see you. You and I have known each other for a while. In my experience, you have been respectful, if not always admiring, of the independence and the believability of government data. How comfortable or uncomfortable are you, Kevin, with the president's decision today to fire the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics?
You know, if you look at what's been happening to the payroll data, especially, then it's been subject to massive revisions. Really, it began during COVID, where the mean absolute revision was north of 100,000 jobs, which is often meaning the revision is bigger than the typical number. And after COVID, it didn't really get much better. And so there's a heck of a lot of noisiness in the labor market data right now, which is bad for markets, it's bad for transparency, and it's something that I think a fresh set of eyes should really look at and try to fix, because the jobs number, you know, they need to be...
You can tell by how he looks and how he's talking that he knows he's lying. He's fully aware of the fact he's lying. The reason, by the way, there's been more volatility in the recording of how many jobs have been gained or lost is because there's been more volatility in jobs, especially with the increasing popularity, well, I guess popularity, the increasing prominence of the gig economy, right? It's a lot more difficult to track how many jobs have been gained or lost when, like, a job is this ephemeral part-time contractor gig through an app, as opposed to, like, you know, a full-time job at a factory. It's a lot easier to figure out how many jobs are gained or lost when, like, a job in America was a W-2, sit your ass down, you're going to work here for 50 years kind of deal. Nowadays, not so much.
Independently produced, but they need to be reliable and not subject to massive revisions. And so there needs to be a big research project over at BLS to figure out why is it that the numbers are so unreliable these days? Why are they being revised so much? And to put it in perspective, the revision over the last 2 months outside of the COVID years is the biggest we've seen since the 1970s. And we're in an age where there's so much data everywhere, and everybody's got a computer, and there's so many ways to scrape things and learn things, that to have data that's way noisier now than it was 10, 15 years ago is really something that people should be puzzling over. And so I think a fresh...
Not at all. That's incoherent. The idea that the fact that everything is phones, everything is computer now, means the numbers are, like, less subject to revision. They're completely incoherent.
Set of eyes helping folks with that problem is the right answer, and that's what the president's judgment is too.
Kevin, forgive me, though, that's not what the president said. The president said that this was politicized, that this was intentionally manipulated to deceive the markets and deceive the country. What you just outlined is a perfectly acceptable academic inquiry into the methodology of government data collection, but that's not what the president said.
Well, the president just saw massive revisions right after he saw some very good numbers, and it would be very unfortunate if the data agencies kept revising. And if you go back and look at the pattern of revisions in the Biden administration, you could see how a political person would look at that and say, "Oh, there's partisan bias in those numbers." No,
not really. Even Trump didn't really allege that. Trump just said that the timing of the revision was suspect.
I can remember way back in the day, there was a huge GDP number that came out right before President Obama was running against Mitt Romney, and then that whole thing got revised away after the election. I think people worry about partisanship in data all the time, and they're right to worry.
Hear this a lot from these people, too, these economic advisors, anyone under Trump. People worry about it, okay? People worry about lots of things. Do you have any, like, evidence? Do you have any counter data? Anything to prove that there's bias? No, of course there's not. I don't know why I'm pretending to ask these questions.
About it. But in the end, what we need is to make sure that the data are reliable and transparent and aren't being revised all over the place. Because when they're being revised all over the place, it creates at times the suspicion that something's wrong with the numbers.
Cynthia Loomis, Republican of Wyoming, just told reporters on Capitol Hill, Kevin, the statistics are what they are. I think it's kind of impetuous to fire the statistician without first knowing whether the numbers are inaccurate.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at the sequence of revisions that we've seen and how enormous they are, then, like, think about it. The mean absolute revision post-COVID is bigger than a relatively healthy number that came out this month. It's bigger than that number. So that revisions are bigger than the numbers they're trying to estimate. That's a problem. That's a clear problem.
No, it's not. There's absolutely nothing at all in economic law or I don't know, best practices that would suggest that a revision number would have to be larger than the total number posted, or shouldn't be larger. It doesn't make any sense. There's no relationship between these factors. The fact that there was a large revision, if anything, to me, you know, I'll take a guess at it. The reason there was such a large downward revision is that a lot of businesses has been trying to hide how much they've been hurt by the tariffs. We know, for example, that a lot of businesses are playing a game of chicken right now because they know Trump has often backed out on tariffs before, as he keeps doing over and over and over again. So a lot of them are afraid to speak up publicly about the harm tariffs are doing to their business because they don't want to get targeted by MAGA supporters. They don't want to be the one that goes, hey, we're getting like over here for a bunch of incest children to show up in their mentions going like, well, maybe you should buy American, and they're talking about like just completely inapplicable to the business prospects at hand here. A lot of businesses have been suffering, you know, and they're trying to hide the cost of the tariffs, but eventually the stuff catches up to you. Businesses don't exactly keep a big bank account. You know, they don't keep a lot of money in storage. They reinvest it for the most part. Yeah, anything tourism related is getting, Vegas is getting, the Sphere is getting, everything's getting.
When others in your realm, meaning other economic advisors to the president, talked to reporters earlier today, they did not dispute the numbers. They found underlying parts of the data that pointed in positive directions, wage growth and the like, but they didn't dispute the numbers. They said, well, we're not so happy with them, but the numbers are what they are. And you know, Kevin, that in this environment in which we now exist, the president's action will be interpreted as something he didn't like, and therefore, because he didn't like it, he took an action. Doesn't that raise in the minds of anyone who is a nonpartisan observer of market data that there is, by the president's own actions, partisanship now?
I don't understand the strategy with the tariffs. Is it just insider trading? Part of it is insider trading. A lot of it is just people being stupid. Unfortunately, I know it's more satisfying to believe that the people ruining the world have a good reason for doing it, but unfortunately, a lot of them are just as stupid as the red hat posters that you see on Twitter reflexively defending anything the president does. It's deeply unsatisfying and very like humiliating to like reconcile with that fact. The fact that to a large extent the country is being destroyed by people who are evil but less intelligent than us. Just laymen. They're just less intelligent than like regular people, basically, because it makes your life feel fragile and trivial, you know? It's like reckoning with your mortality. The idea that some, you know, idiot who doesn't know how to drive that well could end your promising life in an instant by, you know, swerving into oncoming traffic, that's just true. You know, the person who might take your life is more likely to be an idiot or a poor driver than it is to be some hitman or assassin. But most people would find that latter bit to be more narratively satisfying. Doesn't change the fact that you're dead, but people would like to believe that, oh, well, if I'm going to get taken out, I hope it's at least by like a guy who knows, I don't know, jujitsu or something. Nah, probably not. Just a guy who can't drive.
Monstrably inserted into this?
I think that the president hopes, as we all do, that we'll get a person that we can all trust can put the numbers ahead of everything else. And that when you see revisions that are correlated with political things, then you can wonder about it. And so it's very natural, as the president has done throughout the government, for him to want to put his own people in important jobs. And this is one job that he's going to change, but it's
great. That's good. That's great. I noticed that at no point did this guy actually say the data was fake, because he knows he's lying through his teeth. If this guy wasn't lying and really was bought in on the Kool-Aid, he'd be arguing that the data was fake. Instead, he's like, oh, yeah, well, isn't it just normal for the president to want to put his toadies in wherever he likes? Yeah. His smile's making me angry. Doesn't it frustrate you that they don't even put, like, good liars in positions of power when their only job is to lie? Some Republicans also don't like the look of this. Yeah, well, not enough of them. But again, like, this stuff is going to have long-term negative consequences, okay? It's not good for the economy to have inaccurate job creation numbers. It's third world dictatorship. Yeah, that's true. Look forward to this happening the next time there's a big disease outbreak, by the way. The lying Biden official who claimed there were 117,000 new cases last month was faking the numbers to make us look bad. And the new guy, well, he says that there were only 2 new people who got sick, and the rest of them are faking it. Hassett was asked for evidence the numbers were rigged. He has no answer. Appreciate someone's asking directly. Not that it makes a difference.
Just to be very clear, does the administration have any evidence that it was rigged, as the president said? And will you be presenting that to the American public?
Well, the evidence is that there have been a bunch of revisions that could
But
appear
hard
to
evidence?
partisans. Oh, I mean,
There are always revisions.
the revisions are hard evidence. There, for example, there was a 818,000 revision making the Joe Biden job record a lot worse that came out after he withdrew from the presidential cabinet.
Yeah, but before the election. But yeah, that after Biden withdrew from the election, but before the election, because Kamala Harris was the presidential candidate. So Kamala Harris was the one who took the hit there because she was in the national spotlight as the presidential candidate when the news came out that the job numbers were overreported for that time.
Paid. There have been a bunch of patterns that could make people wonder, and I think the most important thing.
He's a noticer. He's noticing something. Guys, everyone quiet. He's noticing something.
For people to know is that it's the president's highest priority that the data be trusted and that people get to the bottom of why these revisions are so unreliable.
Well, let me ask you about what...
Great stuff, really. He's just asking questions about the jobs data, okay? He's just asking questions. Doesn't need evidence. You know it, you love it. It's your boy Vosh asking you to go out and canvass again. Sorry, but turns out the world still needs fixing. This time it's my world, by which I mean the city of Seattle. You hear about Katie Wilson? No? What are you, a loser? You're not aware of the fact that she wants to Trump-proof Seattle? Provide abundant and affordable housing? She's a good egg, okay? Current mayor? Ain't. We want Katie Wilson to win. There's a primary on the 5th, August 5th. For those of you who don't know your dates well, that's coming up real soon. Less than a week. This is my city. I've lived in Seattle for a long time. I like this city a lot. I don't want it to continue to be run by a reactionary, centrist, do-nothing, oligarch-aligned mayor. You know where the links are. They're down the bottom, folks. Please, phone bank with PV. We're putting in the work for this one. Canvassing and phone banking, yes, but I'm going to have a conversation with Katie Wilson. Talk to her on stream. The idea, I understand, it is 2 p.m. PT on Sunday, the 3rd. Ask how she's doing. What does she like about Seattle? How she plans to run. She's a good egg. So please, for my sake, because I live here, all right? Let's try to make Seattle good again. I still think it's pretty good. I'd like to improve it. Can we improve it, please? Work with me here. Go click the link.